Hello, ladies, and welcome to day 2 of Attachment Styles and Money Masterclass. How is everyone feeling after yesterday? We had so much information yesterday, a lot. We're going to have more information today too, but yesterday was really about building awareness. But you can't do anything with only awareness. We actually need tools to begin to release some of these beliefs and subconscious contracts that we have created with money, with our relationships, with buying, selling, spending, all of the things. And awareness is the first step in that process. The next step is really about diving deep into the practices and the self-healing tools and starting to work with what is conscious to create new habits, patterns, and attachments with money, to create a secure relationship with money. Now, there's a lot here to be unpacked today. There's a lot that we're going to talk about in regards to like, how do we make this happen? Because healing is a very individualistic, whoa, that was a hard word to say, individualistic, I can't say it right today, process, but it's also something that needs to happen collectively, especially when we're talking about attachments and relationships, right? So we're going to dive into that today, and we're going to talk about how do we actually begin to heal this? How do we even identify when it's coming up? And what are the tools that we can use immediately in response when we find ourselves shifting into these old patterns and behaviors? So before we get started, how is everyone feeling? How are we doing after yesterday? What came through? What insights? Pop in the chat. Let me know. I would love to hear how you felt doing the homework last night, what memory came up for you, anything that you feel called to share. Please go ahead and pop that in the chat. I would love to hear what came through for you after yesterday. Now, the other piece of this is that the group, I just want to talk about housekeeping stuff. So the group is going to remain open for one more week, and then I'm going to close it down. So the trainings will be removed because these are actually going to become part of a paid program. So this is going to be gone after a week. So I just want to give you guys a heads up to come in and get the homework and do all the things. If you get a little bit behind, that's fine. You have a week to catch up. But everybody who's here, you're getting it in live action time and committing to the process and doing the thing. So I'm really happy that you're here live. And we're going to dive deep into actually how to move through what we learned yesterday. So let's go ahead and come into the space. I'm going to bring up our presentation here. Of course. There we are. Okay, so before we get started, today is really about a feeling experience. Today isn't so much about being in our head, understanding and learning. It's about coming into our body and connecting with the emotions and energies and sensations that are connected to money. So let's go ahead and bring our body into the conversation by dropping in. I'm going to turn my video off so there is no distraction. And I would love for you all to find a comfortable position. If you're able to, shutting down your eyes if it's safe for you to do so, and just coming into the space and beginning to tune in to the sound of my voice. Beginning by focusing on the breath, just following the natural rhythm of the breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. Breathing in, breathing out, noticing your body becoming more relaxed, feeling the air flow in through the nose, into the lungs, and back up and out the mouth, allowing it to flow. Now I want you to bring into your mind's eye the image of a garden. Noticing the lush green plants, the beautifully colored flowers. I want you to just observe this garden and notice what you see around you. Maybe there's a stream or water fountains or a bench. What do you notice in this garden? And just start to connect with this space and notice the sense of peace and ease that comes over you in this little sanctuary that you have found. Beginning to feel the sun touch on your skin, maybe a breeze blowing through your hair. You feel safe and connected to this space, like you've been here many times before. And you look to your left and you look to your right and you notice this abundance of life. Flowers, plants, grass. There's so much life here, so much abundance. It never ends. You stop and take a deep breath in, filling your lungs with fresh air, and release. You begin to notice a feeling of overwhelming gratitude to be in this abundant, safe, beautiful space. And as you continue to move forward through this garden, you notice in front of you a path. And the path is paved with green, beautiful, glowing crystals. You feel called, you step onto the path, and you see as you step each foot in front of the other in a forward motion, you see the crystals lighting up beneath your feet. You continue to follow the path and you find yourself at a stream, hearing the water flowing, a sense of ease and comfort coming over you. You feel alive and connected. And inside you hear a voice in a very confident tone, repeating these statements over and over to you. I am worthy of receiving. I am surrounded by abundance and prosperity everywhere I go. I am deserving of receiving money. I am responsible for the wealth I receive. I attract money with ease. Receiving money brings me joy and excitement. There is always more. There is always abundance, and it is always available to me. You breathe in this sense of calm, prosperity, and abundance, and you breathe out, noticing how grounded your body feels, noticing how safe you feel, how connected and how grounded you feel, and how open your heart is to receiving and having abundance and money. Taking a deep breath in and out, you stand up now, turn around and walk towards the green crystal path, following it back to your garden sanctuary. And as you step into the garden, you begin to settle more deeply into your body, feeling very present and aware. You take one more deep breath in and out, and you find yourself transported back to the present, back to now, back to this space, beginning to open your eyes and coming home into this moment. Go ahead and start to wiggle your fingers and your toes and come back to the space. You can turn your video on when you're ready. And we are going to go ahead and begin. How does everyone feel? There's an extended version of that I have. It's called Money Meadow. So if anybody wants it, there's an extended version that I have somewhere. I have the recording on SoundCloud somewhere. It's like a 20-minute meditation. All right. So we are feeling grounded and centered, and we're ready to start talking about the actual healing process of our relationship with money. Ooh, there's a lot here. There's a lot to unpack, because the thing is that healing is not a linear process. There is no necessarily right or wrong place to start. It really depends on the person. So we're going to talk about the portals of healing today, and we're going to start with the foundational work of our nervous system's relationship with money. So we're going to talk about the mind, the body, the nervous system, and relationship, because we cannot talk about an attachment style without talking about relationship. If the injury occurred within a relationship, it must be repaired through the relationship, right? And so that means, as many of you were stating inside of the Facebook group, you have noticed that, oh shit, this is the same way I act with my partner or my friends or my family. And so if we want to correct this relationship, that correction starts within the relationship with ourselves, but we cannot correct the relationship with ourselves without the help of others attuning to our needs and showing us how to meet our needs and reflecting back to us what it feels like to be validated, what it feels like to be in a healthy relationship, to create the corrective emotional experience. So that is absolutely key. We're going to talk about that more at the end, because that's not something that can be taught. A relationship is something that is experienced. Okay. So I'm going to teach you what can be taught today. And that is the nervous system work and some of the actionable steps that each of you can take for your type of attachment style to money. All right. So we're going to jump in at the nervous system, but just keep in mind, we're going to bring these other portals of healing into the conversation later on. So right now, you have a pattern. You have a pattern with money, with your relationship with money. You have a behavioral pattern, a physical pattern, and an emotional pattern. So let's talk about what a pattern actually is. Like, we say this and yeah, we get it, but let's really look at it for what it is. It is a regular and understandable form or sequence, recognizable in certain actions or situations. So I want you to think about it. I want you to think about it. I'm actually going to take the screen off and I want to bring you all into the conversation in the chat. What behavioral, physical, or emotional patterns do you have with money? So we talked about this yesterday with the anxiety. We talked about it with the avoidance. What pattern do you have with money? If you think about when you receive money from a client, what is your instant pattern with receiving money? Let's start there. When you receive money from a client, what is the first emotional response? What is the next behavioral response? How does it feel in your body when you receive from clients, when you receive money? And it doesn't even necessarily have to be from a client. Think about how you behave or how you respond, or the patterns that you have when someone gives you a gift. This is a great time of year to think about that. How many of you have received a gift for Christmas or know that you're going to get a gift? Or do you just tell yourself, nobody's going to get me anything. Nobody wants to get me anything. I don't want anything. Da, da, da. Like, let's think about these actual patterns when it comes to receiving and how it feels in your body. What is your initial emotional response when you look at your bank account? What pattern do you have with looking at your bank account? When you look at the number in your account, do you have an emotional pattern of feeling fun and excited? Or do you have an emotional pattern of feeling anxious and insecure, which then leads you to checking other accounts or looking at your Instagram feed or looking at your inbox or something like that? Because all of this is a pattern. It is a sequence of events. I see money, I feel this, then I do that, then I feel this way, then I do this. Right? There is a sequence of events that you have when it comes to your relationship with selling, receiving, looking at your bank account, whatever it might be. I was always taught to not show emotion or excitement about receiving money as a gift. See, that's interesting. That's an interesting personal experience. So like, my Christmas gift this year was working with you. Yay, I'm so happy. And so like, we have these emotional patterns that we tell ourselves like, okay, I wake up in the morning and I look at my bank account. Who wakes up in the morning and looks at their bank account? Does anybody do that? Is anybody the person that immediately wakes up and looks at their bank account, or is like one of their things? Oh, there's Janet. Janet said, yes, me, Kristen, me. So that is a pattern. Your initial response is, upon waking in the morning, I need to check money. I need to check on money, make sure money's still there, make sure money's okay, make sure it didn't go anywhere, right? And then after you check the money, there might be a different pattern that happens depending on the number that you see in that account. If the number makes you feel uncomfortable, insecure, unsafe, then you will probably go into a pattern of like posting, reaching out, shutting down. You will either go into a fight or flight response, or you will go into a shut down response. Now, this can look the same as when you receive money from a client. How many of you have ever had a pay in full before that was bigger than you could ever imagine? Like your highest pay in full this past year. I remember the first time I had a pay in full for like $10,000, and that blew it. I never had received that much money in my entire life. It used to take me, I don't know, like fucking 5 months to make that much money. I don't know. I made like 30 to 50 grand a year. That was what my salary was from like beginning to end of a 10-year period. And so like, that was a big amount of money. I had just raised my prices, and then someone paid me in full like a month later. And I was like, well, I was excited. My nervous system went into flight or fight. I was very excited. I didn't necessarily feel scared, but my nervous system had a response. I've always been that way when I receive a lot of money. Now I have a pattern that cues, we're going to talk about this. I'm going to explain exactly, I'm going to break this all down for you so you can play it out in your life, but that cued a response in my nervous system, in my body, in my emotions, and in my behavior. That stimuli, right? That money came in at that level, it cued something in me. So I want you to think about how this comes up for you. Now, the same thing will happen maybe if you get on a sales call and someone says no to you, or someone says no to your program, because that's really what they're saying no to. They're saying no to your program, not to you. That it is like you go into a shutdown response. Then maybe you stop selling for a period of time. You kind of go into almost like a minimal depression. You're like questioning yourself. You start having all of these thought responses, all of these emotional responses. Your body is literally going into a shutdown response. You are in dorsal. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And so like there are these different behaviors and patterns that you have with money right now that are not serving you in some way. They're not helping you be the high income woman that you desire to be. Because if you think about, okay, if that's my response every time someone says no, or that's my response every time I receive money, or that's my response every time I don't have the amount of money, or every time I invest or release money, I have these responses that immediately set me into a dysregulated state, and then create these sequence of events afterward that stress me out or put me in a position that is not where I want to be and moving towards my goals, then you don't have a sustainable business model. Your nervous system is your business partner, and your nervous system has a relationship with money right now, and it's either serving you or it's not serving you. So I want you to think about this as we move on. Do you feel like your relationship with your nervous system's relationship with money is serving you in a powerful way? Like if you were to receive 3 pay in fulls today, could your nervous system actually manage that excitement? Could it actually manage that stimuli at your highest level? If you were to have 3 people reach out today and all 3 of them said no, right after you told them the price, how would you feel about that? Would you go into a shutdown mode? If you were to go like, have a flat tire on your car after you just got a pay in full and it took all of your money, how would you feel? Right? How would that feel for you? I used to feel that if I spent money on something that would happen, like, yeah. So there's like this fear. So that's not sustainable either, because that's the thought pattern. I get money, something bad has to happen. Now the thought pattern is I've received money, so now something bad has to happen. Someone's going to take it away from me. Because maybe there's a memory there. And this is something that we can do more in Secure Wealth Mini Mind, is like where we get deep into like what's actually happening in the unconscious mind, is that there's a memory there where someone took it from you, or you saw it taken, right? And now we carry these kind of unconscious patterns that show up in these little thoughts or behaviors or feelings that aren't really like, we're not fully aware of, but it's like, oh, I get money and now I'm scared something bad's going to happen. Oh, okay. Well, where does that come from? Because if you think that something bad's going to happen every time you have money, well, if you're receiving multiple payments a day from clients, how is that going to, what's your nervous system going to do? It's not going to be sustainable. At some point, there's going to be an energetic stopping point where you can't keep going, right? Maybe you're there now, maybe you want to get ahead of it, but we need to figure out what that is. So let's come back to the share screen here, so I can show you what's happening in regards to your body's response, your nervous system's response to the actual money. So what you're looking at here is the circuits of the polyvagal theory. So this is what happens basically within your nervous system when we are moving through a stress response, okay? So what happens is there's a hierarchy here. And when we experience a certain stimuli, AKA a cue, that leads us into a fight, flight, fawn response or a freeze response, then we become, this is when we shift into our attachment patterns. So if you're looking at the first stage here, this is where we feel secure and safe with money. This is where we want to be, right? A lot of the times we don't even live in this state. A lot of the times our nervous system has been dysregulated for so long that we're literally probably in the mobilization or the immobilization phase, and we don't even realize it. We've just learned to survive here. Think of it as like surviving, thriving, right? So like we just learned to survive in these states. And especially as business owners, this may have been activated when you started because some of the cues that you've had around money, around investing, not receiving it, making it, having more of it, letting it go, getting more of it, where you're just in this constant state of like anxious, hustle, fear, avoidant, apathetic, burnout, right? And you just cycle between these two and you never actually reach this place of like consistent security, consistent safety. Right. And so what's happening is that we're just in this constant state of protection pattern. So let's look at what actually happens here, because there's a hierarchy. We move through this in this exact way. So we will go from feeling safe and connected, and then something happens with our money that cues a threat of danger. We move into a state of stress or anxiety. This is our fight or fight response. And we start to have a conflict in the relationship with money. This is what we were talking about all day yesterday. It's like, I'm anxious around money. I have this avoidance pattern around money. I have this around money. All of those things that we highlighted yesterday are what's happening in each of these different stages. So if you're somebody who's in the anxious or anxious avoidance state, then you are probably stuck in a mobilization. This is where it's like, I'm going to hustle. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to make the money. I'm going to go. I'm going to be anxious. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to think about it. I'm obsessed about it. I'm going to worry about it all day long. And like, there might be moments where you regulate and you come back to a state of safety and connection or healthy balance, and you feel calm and regulated. But how frequently are you being here? And what will happen is if you stay in the mobilization state for too long, you will move into immobilization. Some people move immediately from like mobilization very quickly into immobilization, where that's where you become avoidant. It feels like the threat is too big. You start to shut down emotionally. You feel apathetic. You feel burnt out. You start engaging in unhealthy coping behaviors, which are drinking, eating, shopping, right? How many of you are at Amazon? Like, let me shop, or like doing those things. And like, we will do that. And some of us do it more than others. Like I told you yesterday, I shared like my mother, that was her coping, was shopping. And so she would bring us on these shopping trips. So that's how I learned to cope. So anytime I felt apathetic or was in this state of burnout, I was like, oh, I'll just spend money. That will make me feel better. That is an unhealthy coping mechanism. The same way that some people do it with drinking or drugs or food or sex or working out or whatever. Like, we will find these ways to try to process this feeling of stress and despair and hopelessness that we feel around our money. So if you are constantly in this state of like, I don't have enough, avoidant, I'm not even going to look and see what I have, you're probably in the immobilization phase. Now, we're talking about this on a very this is like surface level. We'll go deeper into this, into secure wealth, but I want you guys to understand how each attachment style is connected to your nervous system. Because what will happen is when we are in the mobilization, we'll move to immobilization, but we can come out of immobilization through some resting and some breath work. We might have some tools that we're already using, but we never actually move out of the mobilization stage and can find control over when we enter into each of these stages, because they all serve a purpose, right? Like we need rest and digest. We need to be able to like collapse, shut down, move through the entire stress response. We can use mobilization to help us move forward, take action, be in the excitement energy, be in the movement energy. But we ultimately, if we live in either of these places too long, we will become completely just burnt out. Your nervous system will be taxed. You'll be emotionally drained a lot. You'll feel fatigued, exhausted, tired. You might have brain fog. You might have lack of creativity. It's really hard to run a business. It's almost impossible to run a business from these places. However, people do it because they're so used to living this way from whatever their trauma responses are and the experience that they've had in life. But eventually it catches up with you is what I'm trying to say here. So your nervous system has created a protection pattern around money, which is showing up when it is in one of these styles, right? And so our goal is to come back to a place where we feel safe and connected with other humans, with money, with our business, with our audience, with our clients, so that we can sell and receive and manage our money and create and innovate and lead from a place of regulation. Now, you are not always going to be regulated. It's not something that's possible. Your nervous system is meant to be activated. That's what it's there for. It's literally there to be activated. So the goal is not to be, oh, I'm just regulated all the time. That's not it. We're looking to be resourced. We're looking to be resourced and in control. Meaning that when I notice myself being activated in some way, when I see the cues coming, I know how to come back to a state of regulation faster instead of living and functioning from these places. So let me see. I wish I could see what's going on in the chat. I'll come back and look after we go to the next slide. So what actually activates the pattern? When our nervous system comes up is when we move into the pattern. So what is activating the nervous system? There are cues. And there are 3 types of cues. And what I want to ask you all right now, I want to really encourage you. You're going to hear this and you're going to be like, isn't that a trigger? I want you to move away from the word trigger. The word trigger is loaded, and many times it carries this connotation of like disempowerment, like, oh, I'm triggered now, therefore like I'm in a place where I'm powerless over the trigger. There just seems to be a lot of like heavy context that's been connected to the word trigger. And that's really not what we're talking about here anyway, but you might find yourself wanting to go back to that vocabulary that you know and have been using for so long. So I want you to move away from that. I want to encourage you to come back to the vocabulary that we're using here, because words hold power, and use the word cue. Your body is literally being cued to repeat a pattern that it is known, that it's been doing and repeating since the beginning of like forever, probably. And so we just want to be able to start to gain control and awareness over these cues, understand where they're coming from, so that then we can respond to them differently. So we have 3 types of cues coming in from the world around us. We have our internal cues, which are thoughts, emotions, memory. We have environmental, which are sights, images, sounds, places, and scent. And then we have relational, people, facial expressions, voice tone, connection, right? All of these are contributing cues to us either feeling safe or us feel threatened. So when you think about cues with money, what are some like of your thoughts or emotions or memories that you have around money that tend to cue you in a way that make you feel safe or make you feel unsafe? What are some in your environment? Are there sites? Probably the image of your bank account or your credit score. Those are sites, right? Or seeing the payments come in your Stripe, or seeing an I'm in or not yet, or seeing a text, because we're not actually, and here's the fucked up part. This is where it becomes really weird, because I've really been studying this. We're not dealing with actual people like we are, but like in our brain, when we're just seeing it's text graphics come through, when we're selling of like, I'm in, or I'm not in, or I'm not, like, there's not actually the facial recognition that comes in, or the tone of the voice or the expressions or the energy in our field of another human when we're actually engaging with humans in the selling process online, especially if we're selling in the DMs. Now, if you do sales calls, it's different. So there is that opportunity to come to like that state of connection that we're looking for in a very safe way on the call by hearing each other's voices. But when you're just looking at like a I'm in or not yet, or I'm not ready, this is actually more of an environmental cue than it is relational. And it's hard to find the connection in the human experience that we need to co-regulate when we're dealing with technology. Does that make sense to you all? Does that, because we're looking for the connection for co-regulation. That's really what we're seeking here. Remember, the healing for the attachment style happens in a new relationship. So when we're trying to have a relationship based off of DMs and Instagram posts, there's this missing component of the facial expressions, the tone of voice, the energy, the reciprocity. And we can start to really misinterpret some of these things as threats very easily. And it becomes this kind of fuckery. And so like when we're looking, let's say, let me give an example of what this looks like in an Instagram post. So how many of you find yourself feeling a little cued for urgency or fear when you don't get as many likes on your post or views on your reels, or people aren't engaging with your content? Do any of you ever feel cued in that way of like, oh, I'm doing something wrong, or like people aren't getting it, or people don't like me, or people don't like my content, or like I'm not going to be successful? Because what's happening there, you're literally expressing yourself, right? Like you're expressing yourself, you're sharing ideas, you're taking a thought and a feeling and an opinion and an idea, you're putting it into words, and then you're sharing it with other humans. But there is no real reciprocity that makes you feel the connection and the co-regulation you're seeking from that, because there's no faces, there's nothing. It's just a heart that you see coming through. So you start to perceive posting on an unconscious level as a fucking threat, and then you stop doing it because you're feeling like you're literally being rejected from the herd when you post and there isn't a response, a real response from another human. And so we kind of have to hack our brains to overcome that, because it creates a lot of disconnection, and disconnection leads to fear. Disconnection leads to protection patterns. And the protection pattern that comes up with selling and like our posts and our content there is like, we just shut down. We just stop doing it because we feel like there's no response there. We feel invisible. How many of you remember feeling invisible as a child? Does anybody remember feeling invisible as a child? And it brings up all these trauma responses from childhood. Oh my God, I put the post up. Oh my God, I sold my thing. Nobody said anything. Nobody saw it. Nobody's liking, nobody's saying anything. Cue the emotional childhood pattern of I'm invisible. I should hide and shut down, or I should act out, or I should do something. Whatever the pattern was in childhood is now representing itself in your pattern in your business as an adult. Does that land for you all? Did it come together at the end right there? And so what we're really seeking more than anything is this connection component with other humans. And if we're not getting it online, we need to be the seekers and find it outside through our connection with self and our connection with community and sisterhood. So we have these cues that are coming in: internal, environmental, relational. This is how they manifest. This is where we're looking for them. Now, if we want to break the attachment pattern that you have, and you have to respond differently to your cues, because right now you have your pattern. I look at my bank account. This is what I do. This is my emotional response. This is what I go into. I hear a no. This is what I do. I hear a yes. This is what I do, whatever it is. I see the money in my account. I see the money leave. This is what I do. You have a pattern. And so in order to break that pattern, you have to respond differently to the cues, because right now you're unconsciously reacting. You are unconsciously reacting to the cues. It's like, yeah, this is just what I do. This is my response. This is it, whatever. And so in order to break the current pattern that you have to be very intentional about identifying what is a safe cue, what is an unsafe cue, and then learning how to respond to it differently. So I want you to think about, let me stop the share here and let me come into the room. Let me see what you guys are saying here. Yes. I hit that immobilization phase after my last launch. As you know, this is where it happens so much, is in launches, because you're saying, here I am to the world, and I'm ready to receive money. And you get so excited and so hopeful and optimistic. And then sometimes it doesn't happen as quickly as you want. And immediately we have our pattern. What is the pattern? Think about what you did when you were a child and you went to mom or dad and you asked them for what you needed, or you told them you were so excited about something and you shared something with them and they ignored you, dismissed you, or invalidated you. What was your pattern after that happened? Did you run and go hide and shut down in your room? Did you act out and scream and yell? Did you go and like fight with your brother or sister to get attention? Did you just like completely, I don't know, go inward with self and dismiss them and find some other family to hang out with your friends, right? Like whatever it was, you did something. You did something. I read something really recently that every time you post and just let it be, your inner child breathes relief, and it really hit. Yeah, it does make sense. And just let it breathe. And also you validate yourself, because what your inner child is seeking is not validation from other people. Yes, that is part of it, but what you're really seeking is to reparent and validate yourself. So that's what we're going to talk about in a minute after we move through the nervous system regulation, is learning to reparent yourself. And there's lots of ways that you can actually reparent yourself through your business, like Jess kind of just said there, and some of the other ways that I teach my clients to, we'll talk more about in the Secure Wealth Mini Mind. But like when we reparent ourselves through our business and we bring our inner child into our business, we create this opportunity for healing and expansion and growth, because that's really what wants to happen. Is your inner child wants to feel safe enough to come into the current reality with you. I think I shut down and get used to it. Yes, I get used to the shutdown and hide. Our breakthrough was that I intentionally falling into the pattern of dysregulation by continuously launching over and over instead of grounding. Yes, this is it. We have a literal habitual pattern and addiction to the dysregulation, because we have been doing it our entire lives. We've been living from a state of stress, anxiety, or complete immobilization, which is the shutdown mode, which is your frozen response. When we've been living, that's our normal. That's our homeostasis. So you know what feels threatening? Calm and relaxed, regulated, having connection with other people. All of a sudden you're like, this is fucking insane. This is too peaceful. I feel too okay. What's wrong with me? Let me find a problem with myself. Let me find a problem with my business. Let me go rebrand my entire shit. Let me go spend all my money so I can have to freak out and learn how to make it back. Let me go and, go look at my money and start to count how all my bills are due in the next 6 months and how am I actually going to do it? Because, oh my God, what if the money doesn't come in tomorrow? And like, holy shit. And we go back to the pattern of chaos and stress and addiction, because that is what we are literally addicted to. Your body is addicted to the chemicals and the emotions that are coming from your dysregulation with money, with yourself, with money, with your business, everything. Today, we're talking specifically about money, but as we know, it's all connected. So you literally have addictions that have to be broken. I am the queen at breaking addictions. And I saw this shit when I came in and I'm like, oh my God, this is literally like helping people with substance abuse, because so many people are addicted to their anxiety and their depression and their unworthiness and the identities that they've created around their trauma and how it's now showing up in their business. And they're just playing it out in all these different ways with their sales and their income and their client relationships and their launching and all the shit. And it's like this really, it's a web. It's this web of shit that's happening between the mind and the body. And most of it is unconscious, because 70% of what you're experiencing is being cued from the bottom half up, which means you don't have consciousness around what is happening. Your body experiences an emotional stimuli or one of those cues that we talked about from the outside or the inside or a relationship. And you're not even consciously picking up on it. The way your client said something cued something in your body, and now you're anxious and think they're going to fire you. And they didn't even say anything. They didn't even say anything like that. They're like, I love the way that you coach. And you heard something like your mom used to say in that tone that made you not believe it. Now you're scared. And you didn't even consciously pick up on it, because that's what your body received. Let me tell you how this showed up for me. The web of unworthiness. I didn't even know that was a thing. Thank you. I'll have to look at it afterward. So like this is something that used to do this to me. I would celebrate my money wins online. You want to find out how fucking triggering money is? Go celebrate a money win online and see how you feel. It's a whole thing. No one has ever said anything bad Like, oh, you suck, you make too much money and you're a bitch and we hate you. Like, no one has ever said that to me. But you know what would trigger me? When people be like, oh, that's so great, we're celebrating you. I perceive that as a threat. My body would literally perceive that as a threat. And I never understood, why does this make me feel so icky and gross and stressed out when people put those comments on my posts? And it was because of experience from childhood where I was completely invalidated about being good enough. I was never meet a standard. I was never proud enough. I never did anything right. So like when someone said that to me, my body literally didn't believe it and had a visceral emotional response to it where I couldn't connect with it. And then I just went into a shutdown mode and stopped doing it altogether. And so, yes, it can happen in reverse, more like views, likes, money. Absolutely. Think of it as like a cycle, like arrows just pointing all in the same direction. So it could start at one place and start over here. It could start down here and then move this way, but it's all coming back to the same place of like, yeah, it's all coming back to the same place of a state of like dysregulation, stress, or shutdown. And so I've literally never celebrated a money win online because of this. So here's the other thing is we can't hide from the cues. We can't hide from the triggers. This is how we become the women who hold it all, is by exposing ourselves to the things that most people never talk about, right? Because this is a societal thing too. It's not just inside of our family system. This is a societal and cultural thing too. Like, you don't talk about money, especially as a woman. You don't talk about money. And if you talk about money, you're a greedy bitch and all you care about is clothes and cars and making money, and you don't care about your kids and you're out for everyone else and you're cutthroat and like all of this stuff. Those are literally the messages that have been ingrained in our subconscious since the moment that we started watching TV, since the moment we started listening to our parents, everything. Think about every single fucking movie with a rich woman in it who had a career, who was ambitious. She either had to sacrifice her goals in life of like being a mom or having a kid. She was viewed as a bitch. She was viewed as a slut. She was viewed as someone who didn't care about family values. She was completely cutthroat and out to get every other woman, right? Like, or she sacrificed it all to be with the man. So like, if you actually want to have the other things you want in life, you can't have money too, right? Like there's this fucking very, very deeply woven unconscious conditioning around having money as a woman. Yeah, she's a bitch. She's a bitch and she's cutthroat and she excuse my language, but she sucked a dick to get there probably. So like, it's like all this stuff, right? Like these are all these things that we see. So let's come back. We went on a tangent. Let's come back. Where are we? Okay. So what has to happen is our environment needs to have more safe cues than unsafe cues so that we can create patterns of connection. So in order to do that, we have to sift and sort through the current cues that we're getting in the world around us and start to take the ones that are distorted as unsafe and create more safe, right? Because right now we have more unsafe than safe, most likely when it comes to money, because of everything that I just said. Because of your family, because of society, because of what you see online, all this unconscious shit is playing out. So we need to start paying attention to our cues. This takes time, this takes thoughtfulness, this takes mindfulness. We need to pay attention to what is happening in the world around us and how this comes in. So start to think about some of your safe cues. Like maybe there's a certain amount of money that needs to be in your bank account that makes you feel safe. When people are responding to your content or positive thoughts about your income, when you're like, okay, I can do this. And the days where you're like, here we go, like, I got this, like money's coming. Or when you write down your goals, like maybe that's a safe cue for you when you start to tap into that energy. But maybe the unsafe cue is when you look at the amount of money in your bank account and it's not what you want it to be, right? Or it's not the number that you told yourself it has to be. Or you look at your savings account and you're telling yourself, oh, well, that's not good. Or you're looking at your credit score and you're telling yourself, well, that's not good. And you're making up all these stories because what happens is the cue activates the mind to tell a story. You're having an emotional response, a nervous system response, and a mental response. And the mental response is just telling the same story you've told yourself forever, just in new creative ways. I suck, it's not working, I'm not good enough, people don't get me, I'm not worthy, whatever it is, right? And it just tells it in a million different ways. Nobody's going to buy this program. Oh my God, only one person's going to sign up. Oh my God, if there's not $18,000 in my bank account, I'm going to be homeless. Like, let's all just kind of really bring things into perspective here. All right. So we're going to get familiar with our cues. This is your homework, what you're looking at right here for today. Your homework for today is you're going to get familiar with your cues. So what cues move you toward a positive connection with money, and what cues move you toward protection? So I want you all to really think about that. Like, what is the cue that makes you feel a really positive connection with money? And what are the cues that immediately start to send you into a place where you feel stressed or shut down or avoidant? When you receive your invoice, does it make you feel avoided? Does it make you feel stressed? Do you feel safe paying the invoice? Do you feel safe receiving the money? Do you feel safe sending the invoice? What do you feel, I know, is a cue when somebody responds on your post, like with mine, it could be positive, but do you have an unsafe response, right? Did that move you towards protection instead of connection? Pay attention, be very thoughtful in inventorying this, because you're going to find a lot of things here that might surprise you. I have a question about this, but not sure how to phrase it. Yeah, I earned, this is the other thing. I watched every single therapist, almost like 90% that I have worked with, try to prove that they're worthy through degrees. I've watched it. I did it. I literally walked off the stage of my master's, picking up my master's degree, and I was like Googling in the car how to sign up for the PhD program. And I was literally burnt. Like, I was done. Like, I was so burnt out. I don't even know how I was functioning, honestly. Like my adrenal, I had adrenal fatigue most likely. And like, I don't even know how I was functioning. And yet I was still like, how do I sign up for the PhD program? My best friend, bless her soul, in the doctorate program now, she literally wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning every day, works out, I'm like, you are hustling for worthiness. I'm like, I tell her all the time, I'm like, I love you so much, but like, you can calm down. Like, it's okay. And like, we do this with money. And it's weird because the more we get of it, the bigger the reaction comes, right? Because if we're already doing this, what happens is when you get more, you just start seeking more. You start seeking more because it never feels like enough, because it's not coming from internal, it's coming from external. So how this shows up with money is it's like, okay, I've made a $10,000 month. Why don't I feel different? Because you're not actually looking for the money, you're looking for safety and security and validation from yourself. And when you make the $10,000, now it's like, okay, I want more, I want more, I want more. Or you shut down when you make the $10,000 because you feel completely triggered and unworthy of it. You see, and you go back into the pattern of either the hustle or the shutdown, the stress and the anxiety, or the depression and the avoidance. And it just keeps playing out in every single way, no matter how much money is there or how much money isn't there. So if you can figure out what your question is, Claire, feel free to type it in the chat, or I can, I'll do a little like openness at the end if you remember what it is. All right, so let's come back because we're already at 12:51. Okay, so your homework is here. This is what you're looking at. You're going to start getting familiar with your cues. Now, when we respond to the cues, these are the questions that you can ask yourself as you're starting to identify them. I want you to answer these questions for the connection and the protection, so that you can understand what your experience is around them and like what's happening in your brain and your mind and your emotions. So like, or I'm sorry, your body and your emotions. So in your body, like, what do you experience in your body with the sensations? What bodily reaction do you have? What do you want to do? Do you want to move toward it? Do you want to run away? Do you want to hide? So like, we're going to do an exercise right after this where I literally am like, here's the money. I want you to pay attention when I do this to you. What happens to your body? You might actually feel like you want to run. You might feel like you have a desire to hug yourself and hide and collapse or cave in. You might have a desire where you see yourself, or a feeling or response where you open up and move. Many times you're not even aware of what your body is somatically doing. I have watched people talk to me about things and I can literally see them start to collapse within themselves and go into a shutdown response. And I'm like, do you see what your body's doing? They're like, no. I've literally had people whose voice starts to raise, their breath starts to get hyped. They start to like run out of breath as they're telling me something. I'm like, do you feel that? Do you understand? Like, do you see that you're like starting to have like a reaction to this? And they don't even realize it because they're so not connected to their body. So I want you to pay attention to your body. Ask yourself these questions. If you start feeling like maybe you want to run, like give yourself permission to move your body as it's coming up. What thoughts come in your mind when it happens? What stories does your brain start to create? What memories surface? And your emotions, what feelings are happening? Where are you feeling them? Do they feel big? Do they feel scary? Do they feel happy? Like what, like, do they feel safe? Do they feel comforting? What are the emotions coming up? Where are they coming up in your body and how do they feel? So I want you to sit with this for a minute. And if you can close your eyes, you can. We're going to do this really quickly, but I want you to imagine that you are sitting in front of your computer and you open your bank account and you see that I have just deposited $100,000 in your bank account. It's there, that on top of whatever other money is there. Maybe you have $100,000 and something sitting in your checking account right now. What is the immediate response? What do you feel in your body? What are your thoughts? What emotions are you experiencing? Sit with it. Now I want you to imagine that you see that number go up by 3 times 3. You have $300,000 in your account. What's the immediate response? What do you feel in your body? What are your thoughts? What emotions are you experiencing? And now we do it again, times 3. You have $900,000 in your account. What is the immediate response? What do you feel in your body? What are your thoughts? What emotions are you experiencing? And I want you to come into the chat and tell me, like, what were just the initial feelings that you even had, or visceral responses, body responses that you had, even hearing me say those numbers. 100,000, 300,000, 900,000. What was coming up for you? Because that is going to give you some ideas around like what actually feels safe for me? What is my actual connection to having large amounts of money? How does my body feel with having that? I want you to come back to this exercise afterward in privacy and intimacy with yourself and do it. And I want you to really pay attention to what is coming up for you when you think about having that amount of money in your bank account, because many of us are saying that's how much money we want. We want to be millionaires. We want to have a $300,000 year. We want to have a $100,000 year. Well, get used to feeling what that feels like in your body now, because the more you can pattern your body to receiving that, to having that, to being someone who has it, because you don't actually need the money in your account to pattern your body to create that amount or to have that amount. You just need to, your brain believes what you tell it and what it sees. So even if you made a bank statement and you typed in that amount and you looked at it every day, your mind is going to start believing I am somebody who has $300,000 in my account. And then you can begin to work with what comes up for you with that inside of the body, inside of your emotions, inside of your mind. And now you can begin to pattern your behavior, pattern your beliefs, pattern your nervous system to be somebody who holds that and has that amount of money, so that when it actually comes in, you don't get fucking triggered. And you've already rehearsed being the woman, because that's really what this is. This is a body rehearsal, an emotional rehearsal, a systematic rehearsal to be the woman who has and holds that amount of money. You're training your mind, you're programming your mind, you're programming your nervous system to be the woman who has that much money. So let's talk about the specific tools for each attachment style. So there are different tools that each of you can use, but again, this varies a lot for each person depending on the overlap that you have, what is the current experience. But for anxious, if you're anxious, we need to have conscious disconnection. So if you're anxious, that means you are somebody who's looking at the money all the time. You're hyper focused on the money. You're looking at the credit score. You're looking at the things. You probably have all the notifications set up on your phone to ding you every time something happens, or the credit score changes, or the payment comes in, or this or that or this. For you, this is about setting boundaries, removing apps, and having conscious disconnection. You need to move away from the cues, because those cues are what triggers your anxiety. So we need you to consciously disconnect from them. The other thing that needs to happen here is grounding into safety before selling, because if you're anxious around money, when you go to sell, you're probably coming from an anxious energy. So the first thing that you would do before you actually get online to sell is ground into your energy, maybe even use the safety container that I gave you inside of this program, use some of the meditations, use some breath work tools, use some vagus nerve toning, like really coming into a place where you ground into safety before selling. So that when you come on, you're not like, and like, and you're carrying that anxious energy. You can just come in from a place of like neutrality, groundedness, calmness, connection. Why do people buy? Because they feel connected to you. You energetically cloak yourself when you are coming from disconnection and protection, which is your anxious state. So how can people connect with you if you have a protection up from your anxiety? You see what I'm saying here? So really about like coming into that place of safety, reparenting the inner child and letting her play with money. So she feels really scared around money. So we need to let her come and look at money like it's something to be played with. So really bringing her into the conversation with money and letting her play with it, letting her see that it's something that can be fun and exciting and safe. And it doesn't have to be something that carries so much fear and anxiety, which she was probably taught in childhood to be very scared of. Be scared of this thing. Be scared of this big bad money thing because there's never enough of it. It makes mommy and daddy feel stressed out. It makes us fight. And so you should be really scared about this too. So we need to reparent her and validate her and let her know that money is something that she can feel safe with. All right. Avoidant, complete opposite than anxious. We need conscious connection. So like there were a couple people who said, I look at my bank account every morning. That when I asked earlier, the avoidants were like, I haven't looked at my bank account in a week. I don't even fucking know. Like maybe I looked at it 3 days ago just to check and make sure, but like I barely look at this thing. So the avoidant, we need conscious connection. I need you to be looking at your account. Like I want you to check your account every day. I have something called the Wealthy Woman activity, or the Wealthy Woman Diary. This is where you go in and track money every day. I do not recommend this to anxious styles. It's not good for them. It actually creates more of a problem. But for avoidance, the Wealthy Woman Journal, it is a lifesaver. It will teach you how to have a safe connection with your money, be very aware of money, looking at it, understanding it, have a healthy relationship with it. And it's also exposure to your stimuli. So like to your cue. So when you're exposing ourselves to the unsafe cue and learning that they are actually safe, that our body can handle it, we can regulate ourselves during the time that we feel stimulated and activated. Now all of a sudden it loses its power over us. We regain control over what used to be an unsafe cue. And now it's actually a safe cue. And our body can regulate very easily in that. Money dates are also absolutely critical. Does anybody know what a money date is in here? This is something that we talk about a lot. This is where you look at everything. You look at all of the money. So like if you're avoidant and you haven't looked at all of like your bills and your budget and like what's going out and what's coming in and what you owe and all of that, that's going to feel really scary. I actually don't recommend doing the money date first because it's going to feel too overwhelming to your system. Come in and start with the small exposure, just looking at your bank account every day. Just look at your bank account every day, see what's there, get used to being okay with whatever number is there. Because that's really what you're avoiding, is that you're scared of seeing the number and being triggered. The anxious, they want to be triggered because they want the anxiety. They're like, oh yes, feed me the anxiety and the stress around this number. The avoidance, like, keep it away. I want to be over here and feel stressed out without knowing what it is, like, and so we need to kind of look at that more and really get comfortable with it. The anxious avoidant, you're going to do both of those things depending on what the cue is. So like if you're anxious avoidant, you might be somebody who looks at your account every day, or you might be an anxious avoidant who doesn't look at your account every day. So this is where self-awareness comes in. Like what tools can you use here? And then using the nervous system regulation and the reparenting tools to address each of the cues that are coming up for you. The dismissive is the interesting one, remember? Because they're like, money, I'm good, but money's bad. And so what you really need to work on is the reformation of your money ideologies. So starting to look at, like, I would actually suggest some CBT work here is like, let's do some thought work around like, what makes money bad? What makes money good? What proof do you have to support both of these things? You know what I mean? Is there anything that makes this untrue? And I would do a lot of CBT work with you to really work on like, okay, where is the belief here that's actually not true? How can we bring it into congruency with what you want and start to reprogram your mindset around it and create a new schema around money? Because that's really what the problem is here. So the dismissive also is going to be like looking at money every day, setting bigger money goals for yourself, starting to look at people who have lots of money and doing shadow work around what comes up when you see these people who have a lot of money. Yours is way more about the relationship specifically with how you contextualize money, not so much with like having it. Does that make sense for you all? All right, let me stop share here. Come into the room. Let me see how everyone is doing. All right, 900K, I was thrilled. 300K I felt the most safe. 100K was like, be careful with this. 900K was complete safety. I love it. The second and third, I could even picture it, felt ridiculous and not for me. Good. I'm really happy that you were able to like see that and feel it for yourself, because that's where the work needs to be done. For mine, 900K feels really big. That's my work. That's where I'm at right now, because I've never seen that amount of money before in my entire life. So like sitting with that, like I'm almost like, what does that look like in taxes? Like, and then I start feeling unsafe with it. And so this is why I ask you to come back and sit with it alone by yourself, because you might notice, oh, there's some thoughts like, oh, well, how much am I going to have to pay in taxes? How am I going to manage that? Do I have to hire somebody? How many things do I have to sell? How many hours am I going to have to work? You're going to start seeing how your brain comes up with all these stories. These are cues, because it's telling you, oh, okay, you should be scared of this because you can't manage it because it's this much. 100,000 was relief, 300 was excitement. I was like, oh, fuck time, buy, move, and do. It felt the safest. When I first received my inheritance, I felt all of that, and slowly it started to dwindle since COVID. Yeah, and that's what money does. Money moves. Money comes and it goes. Money is an energy, and it loves to move. It loves to be with us, and it loves for us to release it. So again, when we come back to this idea of the relationship, if we're clinging to it and expecting it to just stay and not go anywhere, we're going to become hoarders, and we become clingy, and we become anxious. And then every time a little bit goes, we already have the belief that it's never coming back. And so money is an energy. It loves to move. It's always available to us. We can always create more of it, but it needs to be received and released, received and released. I think of money like a river. It's constantly flowing. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it's slower, sometimes it's faster, but it's always flowing, and it's always available. And it's not up for me to build a dam around money. Money is meant to come into my world. Let me receive it. I can use it responsibly. I can save it when necessary, but I can also release it. I can also create different ways to use credit to help me support myself in getting more money or spending more money when necessary. There's going to be pattern. Like if we're in a rigid pattern, we can't open ourselves up to possibility, because money has to move in different ways at different times. There are going to be times in your business where it's like all about receiving. And then there are going to be times in your business, especially in the beginning, like the first 2 years, where it's all about releasing. No matter how much money I have made, I have invested so much back into my business that I've never really seen it represented in my savings account. I've had money in my savings account. I have money in my savings account, but it is not reflective of the amount of money that I have made over the past 3 years, because I have spent over $200,000 on coaching for myself. Not to mention moving into a new home, buying a car, getting all of the things that I truly desired, and giving myself permission to get those. Now I could look at my account and make up all kinds of stories, which I did this year. And I learned a lot about this. That's why we're having this masterclass, because I have done this work this year and embodied it now. But like I had come to a place where I was very much like, I'm a shitty person and I suck because I don't have all of this money that I made sitting in my savings account. Who am I to even talk about the fact that I made this money because I don't have it tangibly in my account? I thought I wasn't even allowed to celebrate the fact that I made this much money because I didn't have it in my hand. That felt really shitty. That was a pattern about I'm not ever good enough unless I can show you how good I am. Unless I can tangibly show you how good I am and make you see it and make you understand me and get me, then I'm not worthy of showing myself to you. Pattern from childhood, how to work through that. That's an attachment style. I was so sensitive to rejection. I felt unworthy, anxious and avoidant, anxious, sensitive to rejection. And so like, this is huge. So my love language is gifts, but I'm wondering if it's connected to the fact that my mom bought me gifts to feel better. Yep, probably. Probably. And there's nothing bad or wrong with that either, Claire. Like there's nothing bad or wrong with that, but this is all just what it is. And this is the perfect segue to what I was going to say, because we can't heal the attachment style with money without healing the attachment style to ourselves, ultimately the relationship with ourselves, right? So the path to feeling safe and secure with money and making more of it isn't linear. It's going to be filled with ups and downs and understandings and new revelations, and it's all specific to our individual experience. Most of it's unconscious and we can't see what we can't see. So you're probably like unaware of like 80% of it. Like you're not like, you have some awareness on little pieces of it, but it isn't until you are in relationship with other people and looking at it and having somebody reflect back to you and witness you and talking it out that it actually becomes conscious. And it requires you rewiring the mind and body and nervous system's relationship with money. Then having others who can attune and engage in emotionally corrective experiences. Now, if you feel like in your soul that this is true for you, then you have one of two options. One, you can continue repeating this pattern and getting the same results. And right now, I doubt that that's any of you because you're here. You recognize that there's some pattern, you want to learn about it, you want to become aware about it, of it, but awareness and learning won't do shit. You have to actually make the choice, which is your second option, to disrupt the pattern and create a secure relationship with money that serves you and lets you have more of it. So I just want to talk a bit about what this looks like in action. This looks like having community. This looks like having sisterhood. This looks like being with other women who understand you. Over the past 3 years, I've done retreats, group programs. I've done 100 different ways of bringing women together so that they can feel this in community with other women and heal these relationships. Because at the core of everything, if we want to heal the relationship with ourselves, with money, we need to have relationships with other people where they can witness and reflect back to us and help us heal. Because most of the injuries that we carry in our life happened in relationship. So therefore, in order to heal it, we need relationships with others. And they need to be safe, supportive relationships of people who get it and understand what we're going through. We just ended the Rebellious Mastermind yesterday, and the women were like, the relationships in here is really what changed everything. It's just having people who got it. Having somebody to guide me, obviously a coach, we all know that a coach is invaluable. Like there's so much benefit there of having somebody who's gone before us and can coach us and help us see what we can't see. But the undertone is the community. The community is what truly helps you repair and see and witness and know that you're not alone and alleviate shame. And this is something that is a brand value of empowered coaching, but also changes everything. Results happen so much faster in groups. This is why even when I worked in mental health, 80% of the programs that people attended were groups. They had one-to-one session a week. For the rest of the 5 days a week, they were in groups 6 hours a day. So 5 groups a day, 5 days a week, because the transformation happens in groups, it happens in community, it happens in relationships. And so if you are desiring to go deeper into this work, if you want to create those relationships, if you want to heal the limitations that your unconscious has placed on your income, then I invite you to come join me in the Secure Wealth Mini Mind. You've heard me talking about this the entire time that we've been here. You've seen people signing up for it. This program is literally going to help you see what you cannot see and break through the unconscious limitations that you have with your income so that you can secure the wealth that you deserve and that you desire. Now, what we are going to cover over our 4 weeks together inside of the Mini Mind is making the unconscious money patterns conscious. We're going to continuously work on that during every group call. Then we're going to move into disrupting the patterns by breaking the emotional habits that are wired into your nervous system so that making more money can feel safe and you can move through any income blocks that you've had and actually start growing to higher and higher levels. Next stage in this process is connecting your body to wealth by releasing the stored emotions and experiences so that you can make space for you to receive more money with ease and pleasure. So now all of a sudden you're in this state of secure connection with money. Money feels easy to make. Making money feels safe and supportive. Talking about money feels safe and supportive. It actually starts to feel fun and easy and pleasurable to be in relationship with money, to be selling, to be receiving money, to be spending money, all of it. You feel very empowered with your money. There is no longer these unconscious patterns that are playing out that are holding you back from scaling your business. If you want to be a successful business owner, the baseline of this is truly getting into right relationship with money. And that is what we are going to do through all of the portals of healing inside of the Secure Wealth Money Mind. Now, at the end of this, you're going to be able to embody that wealthy woman so that you can grow your business and make the income that you deserve and that you desire. If you want to come join us, the investment now is $777. There are payment plan options available. We start on December 27th, which is next Tuesday. We will have one group call per week, and there will also be a somatic wealth embodiment ceremony, which means we are going to come in and I'm going to guide you through a somatic practice to come into right relationship with money so that you can release all of these things that you've stored, all of the emotions, all the experiences, and start to embody the wealth that you want to have and feel safe having that amount of money in your body. The somatic work is priceless. I could literally charge $777 just for that process that we're going to do alone, because it is a breakthrough that you didn't even know that you needed. So if you want to come join us, this is the continuation of this masterclass. We're going to sit in communion. We're going to witness each other. I'm going to guide you through the process so that you can look at these individual patterns that you have and all the experiences, your little web of experiences that are contributing to it. And we can start to move through that way faster than you trying to do it on your own and repair a relationship without relationship. It doesn't connect, and it's going to take a lot longer for you. So that is something that I would love to invite you all to. If you want to come join us again, we start next Tuesday. Now, as we begin to wrap up here today, if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. I'd be more than happy to answer them. And just a little bit around what your work is for today. So you are going to take what you've done today. You're going to do the homework that I have on that slide around identifying your cues, starting to feel in your body what is safe and what is unsafe, and start to figure out how you're going to begin to respond to these cues consciously instead of unconsciously. And then the next step is practicing and integrating every day afterward and being intentional and mindful and thoughtful about the process. Okay. So all of the slides will be uploaded in the group. You'll have access to those in the homework. The group will remain open for the next week. I am so excited for the women who have already jumped into Wealth Money Mind. I can't wait to see you next Tuesday. I'm very, very, very excited about this program. For all of you who have come, thank you so much. I am so happy that you joined me for this. I cannot wait to see what happens next for you and all the growth that you have from this experience. I love you all. I hope that you have an amazing holiday and an amazing new year if I don't talk to you before that. And I will see you in all of the different places at all the different times. All right. I love you all. Catch you next time.